Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 5, Episode 18. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Here we go again. Last week it was the tariffs. This week it'll be immigration. There is something to be said about having a programmatic and a well-thought-out conservative immigration policy, but what we've seen from this clown show ain't it. And Bill Belichick falls in love. If you think the relationship that Bill Belichick has with that 24-year-old girl is unique, you have never been to Scottsdale, Arizona. Bill Belichick may be a savvy veteran head football coach, but the man's a novice in the sugar daddy, sugar baby paradigm. Up your sugar daddy game, William. Thank you all to my dear and loyal listeners for sticking with me. If you're new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends and enemies far and wide. This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting.
Act 1. Move fast and break things doesn't work with immigration.
There's a documentary on YouTube from Vice News. It's about 10 years old. Probably about an hour long, goes over the origins and the influence of this gang, MS-13. MS-13 being all the rage right now in the news, but in many parts of the world, MS-13 was all the rage in the news 15 years ago. I did a piece last week on tariffs. I'm doing a piece this week on immigration. And unfortunately, it's going to be in the same vein as the piece that I did on the tariffs. Although I agreed with the Trump administration's approach that mass deportations needed to take place, and I agree that they do, particularly for the types of people that the administration was claiming that it was going to target in these mass deportations. Violent criminals, felons, gang members. The reason I bring up this documentary, it's quite simple. Watch the documentary and understand that being a member of MS-13, you're not part of a secret cult. This isn't some sort of Illuminati-style conspiracy organization. If you're a member of MS-13, you prominently display the fact that you're a member of MS-13 vis-a-vis tattoos, generally on your face. Yes, a lot of the gang members have tattoos on their arms or on their legs or on their back, but they generally also have a tattoo on their face. It is readily identifiable that this is a member of MS-13. They are not shy about it. They do not want the public to have any misunderstanding or confusion. We are MS-13 and we are Legion. The Trump administration has had 2 high-profile examples of someone who they allege was part of the MS-13 gang, and they fumbled the fucking ball twice, making this entire endeavor, identifying violent people who need to be deported from this country and then mass deporting them, a joke. And just like tariffs, I don't want to see a tool that is so valuable to the foreign policy and domestic policy of this country be completely demonized by it being misused by buffoons. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know the cases that I'm talking about. You've got a guy who had a tattoo on his hand that the Trump administration is adamant is part of MS-13 and doesn't say MS-13. It just doesn't say MS-13. And then they Photoshop it and the president gets confused and thinks that MS-13 is written across this guy's knuckles. They capture this guy in Virginia and say that he's one of the higher echelon leaders of MS-13 on the East Coast. They end up not charging him and quietly deporting him. Neither of these cases make the administration look good, but I read something that was interesting about deporting these quote-unquote criminals to El Salvador and the president, Bukele, wanting MS-13 gang members as part of these deportations because he uses particularly high-level guys as leverage in negotiations with the gang in his own country. It's very possible that after all of that bombast, that there was a high-level MS-13 leader that was captured and that the U.S. quietly deported him to El Salvador without charging him in this country, just so they could maintain this relationship with this foreign leader. Some people call him a dictator. I'll leave that up to you. But because we are now pot committed to deporting people and wanting them to stay in these detention centers, particularly in El Salvador, we need to use these high-level gang members as bargaining chips with our ally, Bukele, in El Salvador. Think about the questions that raises, dear listener, that you would have a criminal who'd been operating in the United States of America with one of the most dangerous gangs in the world, and instead of prosecuting that criminal in the United States, imprisoning that criminal in the United States, we'd quietly deport that person to another country so they could possibly be used as leverage in negotiations with the very gang that they're a member of, so much so that they could be released and not face any criminal consequences if that deal was sweet enough for the government of El Salvador. Let's look at the flip side. The flip side is you've got this guy who had a tattoo on his hand now sitting in some detention center. And although I'm not sure about it because I haven't done all the research, many people call it a torture center because the idea in El Salvador is if you get sent to this place and you're a gang member, the deterrent isn't that you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life. The deterrent in El Salvador is we're going to torture your ass for the rest of your life. And that life may not be that long given the nature of the torture that we're going to inflict on you. When I first heard about this program and the nature of the prison that these people were going to, I have to admit, dear listener, I was equivocal. I'm not exactly excited about it, but if we're gathering the hardest of the hard, felons, criminals, gang members, and we're sending them to some place where they are never going to get out, they're never going to see the light of day again, it's hard for me to shed a tear if some of the civil liberties that are extended to citizens of the United States of America aren't extended to these people. The problem, of course, is when you don't include the hardest of the hard, the worst criminals that you have in this country, and you just start grabbing up any swinging dick that you can, and you think that the public at large, not your own supporters, not the sycophants, that the public at large will buy, look, we said this guy is a criminal, therefore he's a criminal, don't ask any more questions. If you were going to take these draconian measures, you have to be right. You have to be certain that the people that you've grabbed are the people that you think they are charged with the crimes that would warrant them being sent to some dungeon in a far-off Central American prison. The problem is the Trump administration has not done that at all. They've adopted throughout the government this Silicon Valley model of move fast, break things. Broken record begins now. Move fast, break things may work in Silicon Valley. They don't necessarily work for government, particularly where you're dealing with foreign countries. You're dealing with actors that have their own sovereignty. It's been a disaster with tariffs. It's been a disaster with Doge. It's been a disaster now with immigration. And no, I don't think Doge was a success. You heard the Secretary of Defense, and I've made this comment, broken record again. It appears that Doge has saved roughly $150 billion, and some people question that figure, and it may be wrong. But the fact of the matter is, we're about to add roughly $100 to $150 billion to the defense budget, thereby increasing it to $1 trillion a year, and therefore there is no net savings to the U.S. budget. The entire Doge endeavor was a wash. I'm also now questioning the entire premise that there are enough violent felons, that there are enough gang members in this country that are easily identifiable by their rap sheet, their history of incarceration, that you can easily identify them, that you can round them up, and that you could deport them absent giving them all the civil liberties that are afforded an American citizen. If this is so difficult in the inception of the program, is it possible that there aren't as many of these people in this country as we have been led to believe? I can't end this segment before I make a comment about ICE and the fact that it appears, to the extent the administration was really serious about grabbing up the worst of the worst, criminals that had a history of violence, felonies, gang affiliation, ICE has completely betrayed that vision. The people that they're grabbing up are not the worst of the worst, and it doesn't take an investigative journalist to figure this out. Let me flip that idea in your head for you, dear listener, if you disagree. If these criminals were the worst of the worst, would not the administration want there to be show trials so that they could parade these people in front of the cameras and say, look at this felony history. Look at this record of gang affiliation and the things that they've done. This is the type of person that Joe Biden let in during the course of his open border policy. Something to that effect. If you don't see the PR, if you don't see the administration using these examples as publicity stunts, then it's very likely not true. What it appears to me is going on is that ICE is grabbing up anyone that they can, slapping a label on them. The administration is sympathetic to this, isn't putting any more pressure on ICE than to just go and grab up some people. They'll label them any way that they want, and they're going to try to sell it to the American people. No one, dear listener, truly wants to take on MS-13 at a macro or a global level. There will be firefights. You will have to exchange rifle rounds with people. These are, in fact, violent criminals. It is much easier to achieve your political aims by grabbing up a bunch of innocent people. And by innocent, I should qualify that. Innocent to the extent that they haven't committed any felonies, they have no known gang affiliation. Make no mistake, they are in this country illegally. Labeling them something and then deporting them before people can ask a lot of questions. And that approach, of course, is to satisfy a 24 or 48-hour news cycle without consideration of the consequences of how that would hurt or detrimentally impact conservative immigration policy. I'm not against ICE going and grabbing up a bunch of people that are in this country illegally. But without any due process, shipping them off to a dungeon in El Salvador and saying that they're the worst of the worst criminals, think about it, dear listener. The fact of the matter is, if those people are innocent of the crimes that they're being accused of, they're not violent, they're not gang members, what are the police going to do in the future? They're going to continue to grab up innocent people and ship them off, and they're very likely then going to ignore the real criminals, the real threats. It's no different than when the police charge the wrong person with a murder, and the state prosecutes the wrong person for a murder, and the state gets a conviction. And then later it turns out, when using modern technology, DNA, the person was innocent. Do you think the police have any incentive, the state has any incentive to go back and look for the real murderer? I say this all the time. I'm a markets guy. You see how the markets can influence people's actions and behaviors, how they are incentivized, how they are decentivized. If you provide incentives for people to go out and grab up anyone and then say, hey, you can label them any way you want, we're going to deport them, and there won't be any oversight or scrutiny into that process. Do you think that they're actually going to go out and take on some of the most violent criminals we have in this country at risk of their own lives? The buffoonery of the way that this is being handled is going to impact the way this country looks at immigration for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And although the intentions may be good, and at this point I'm questioning whether or not the administration's intentions are good, the actions are going to have a detrimental effect on the perception that the American people have about how we manage immigration in this country. It's another area where I believe the Trump administration, in the long run, is going to do more harm than good.
Act 2. If you think that relationship between Bill Belichick and that 24-year-old girl is weird, you haven't spent any time in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Bill Belichick isn't the first, and Bill Belichick won't be the last. We often give away our knowledge, our experience in different subject matters based on our reaction to things that we hear within those subjects. So if I'm talking about driving a car and you interject, oh my God, people were driving 85 miles an hour, you have an idea about how that person operates their motorized vehicle by way of their exclaim of doubt, of judgment, of curiosity, whatever it may be, based on the fact that you're talking about driving fast. All of the people in the sports media landscape would like you to believe that they're the most savvy, cosmopolitan people that have ever walked the face of the earth. But I can tell you this, by way of their reaction to the Bill Belichick situation, this woman, Jordan Hudson, if you can call her a woman, I believe she's 23 or 24 years old, their quote unquote relationship, these people aren't nearly as experienced as they claim they are when it comes to the matters of the heart, when it comes to love. Because when you are 73 years old and powerful and a public figure, this is what love looks like. You can get yourself a beautiful 24-year-old woman. Now, if I ask you to go out and get me a loaf of bread, you will go to the grocery store. There's a place that you can go to get that thing. If I ask you, where can I buy a Porsche? You will look up the Porsche dealership. There's a place that you can go to get that thing. If you ask me, hey, where as an octogenarian can I go and get a woman 50 years my junior to parade around as a public validation of my unyielding masculinity and manhood? Well, I'll tell you where to go, dear listener. It's called Scottsdale, Arizona. In this wonderful, magical place called Scottsdale, Arizona, can you find a 68-year-old, a 72-year-old, a 76-year-old with a 20, 24, 28-year-old girlfriend? Do some heads still turn in Scottsdale based on such a relationship? I'm sure they do. But is it as prominent or as prevalent as it would be in the town or the city that you live in? No. No, it wouldn't. And let me dispel this notion about anyone in their senior years maintaining this aura or even this specter of who they were 20 years ago. Age does not discriminate. And when you have a man who's been at the pinnacle of a certain industry, who's been a public figure, who's made significant amounts of money, and they're battling the same thing that every man in that position has ever battled throughout the course of human history, and that's father time. Aging does not discriminate. It's not discriminating against any one of us, and it's not discriminating against Bill Belichick. Some little 24-year-old starts to coo in your ear, and you delude yourself into believing, I still got it. I'm still that guy. Is she here because of my money or my influence or my status? No, she loves me. I can march you out to between 10 and 15 bars and restaurants in Scottsdale, Arizona. Tonight, I'm recording this on May the 2nd, a Friday, and you will find this phenomenon taking place, whether or not it's a 70-year-old bringing out a 25 to 30-year-old to parade her around, or 25 to 30-year-olds soliciting a 70-year-old in order to become his sugar baby. And that's exactly what this is. Let's not mistake what this is. This is Bill Belichick being a sugar daddy. This little girl, Jordan Hudson, is a sugar baby. And like any savvy sugar baby, she knows well enough that she needs to sink her teeth into Bill Belichick before that she could pull some of the stunts that she's been pulling over the course of the last 90 days. And don't think it any different than any of these other situations that you see out here in Scottsdale. Once these little girls have their teeth sunk in to these old men, it's over. Understand this mentality. I did not use this language inadvertently. Bill Belichick is 73 years old. He still wants to see himself as a virile, masculine man. The veneer of him being this hard-ass coach, this control freak, this disciplinarian, it's all fading away in his own mind with age. He wants to demonstrate that he is still as capable and competent and virile a man as he was in 1999 in the year of our Lord 2025. Enter Jordan Hudson. I don't know the background of this girl. I looked up a couple of things that look like clickbait. Who knows if they're true? I don't think that she was an escort before she met Bill Belichick. I don't think that she was a dominatrix. I think that she was like most of the girls who are out here in Scottsdale. They want to be sugar babies. There is a different dynamic in that relationship where prostitutes just exchange sex for money. It's very transactional. These girls are a little bit more savvy. They're in a relationship with these men, and do I have any doubts about whether or not they're having sex? No, I don't. They're clearly having sex. But it's more than just give me $500 or $1,000 and I'll sexually gratify you and then I go away. They're smarter than that. How smart, you ask? Well, there is reporting, I believe it was the New York Post, Hudson, through an LLC or a number of LLCs, has acquired close to $9 million in real estate assets that are now returning money to the LLC, which it appears she controls exclusively. The girl's making about $20,000 a month in real estate from rents. Frankly, I don't know many 24-year-olds that can start an LLC and understand a limited liability company doesn't immediately get qualified for credit. You usually, as one of the members of the manager of the LLC, have to prove up financial wherewithal to take out loans. And you know who might have the financial wherewithal to back a loan for an LLC that is managed or has a sole member that's 24 years old? Bill Belichick. You see, dear listener, these old men have had everything in life and they aren't happy. Let's repeat. They've had everything in life and now they're at the point in their life where they're looking back and that's all in the past. And frankly, today, they're not happy. And you know what they have that's not buying them happiness? Money. The money doesn't matter. So going out and buying real estate for any one of these little girls, that's not that big a deal. The only time they'll get pissed off about the money in the real estate is when the sugar baby stabs them in the back. That's the only leverage they have over these girls, is the money. I can't use names and I can only vaguely talk about some of these stories, but in my professional capacity as a real estate attorney in Scottsdale, Arizona, I come across many a case, many a situation where a man has paid a significant amount of money for a girl. That's right, I'm going to call her a girl between the age of 21 and 28 to buy a piece of property, and shortly thereafter, the relationship deteriorates. I know several situations, not one, not two, not three, more than three situations where one individual male has done that for several women at the same time and gotten into conflict with several women at the same time. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Bill Belichick is a novice sugar daddy. He does not know what he's doing. He's letting one girl drag him around by the dick, and he could have 3 or 4 of those if he only had the savvy to come to Scottsdale, Arizona and play his cards right. And no, Bill Belichick isn't the only novice. There are plenty of these old guys who come to Scottsdale and think because of their money and their status that they're going to conquer the world only to be played by these girls. You need to learn how to be a sugar daddy, just like you need to learn how to be a good NFL football coach, a good NFL head football coach. For Bill Belichick's sake, let's hope that his learning curve on the football field translates just as well to his learning curve in the field of love. Because by way of how beaten down he looks, that man's in love, and that girl is the stripper at the strip club that found a mark that's willing to drop hundreds of dollars on her every 30 minutes. And no, dear listener, I've never been to a strip club. I've just heard these stories anecdotally, of course, about a stripper paying attention to the same guy exclusively for the entire night, realizing in her experience in her profession that she could probably milk $4,000 or $5,000 out of this guy over the course of 6 hours. Let's give credit where credit's due. Jordan Hudson is playing the same game with much higher stakes and having a much better result. Up your game, Billy. Scottsdale, Arizona awaits. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.